Good morning and welcome to the first AGORA Series Masterclass. It's wonderful to see so many of you on so early on a Saturday morning. I'm Giorgos Krasakopoulos. I'm head of programming for the Thessaloniki Film Festival, but as most of you in this theater today, basically like everyone, period, I'm an avid TV series watcher. And basically, this is Jeremy Podeswa's fault. It all started when we met this family of running a funeral home back in 2001, I think, 6 Feet Under, and it never stopped from there. If you have a favorite series, a series that you love, that you binged watched, it's pretty sure that Jeremy had something to do with it, either show running it or writing for it or directing episodes for it. And it's a pleasure to have him here in Thessaloniki. It's been quite some time since he was back here. I should say the year. It was 1994 when in Thessaloniki we screened his first feature, Eclipse, and a wonderful movie that you should watch and seek out if you haven't. I think it's going to be re-released soon, from what I hear. So give him a warm welcome. And together with him on stage, there's going to be another friend and another friend of the festival, Lefteris Charitos, who pretty much did the same for Greek television. He glued us on the TV screens with series like Wild Bees and now The Witch, which I'm sure everyone is watching. Lefteris. So these two fine gentlemen have a lot of things in common. First of all, they both started out from the cinema world. They started out making movies. They're also friends, and they have worked together. When Jeremy shot Fugitive Pieces in Greece, Lefteris was the first assistant director. And I know that the conversation that is about to follow is going to be illuminating, fun, and super interesting. So I leave the floor to them and enjoy. Thank you very much for being here.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'll just do a short intro of the time I met with Jeremy. So I was the first AD on the Greek crew, not the Canadian crew. They had their own first AD. And I remember the first day we were shooting on the island of Hydra, which is an island that I have a house there. And the call was for 7 o'clock. Now, we know in Greece that when we say 7 o'clock, you can go at 7:10, maybe at 7:15, have a coffee, wait for things to happen. So at around 8:30, you can start shooting. And I'm like, this is what I know. I was born in this country. And so I walk from my house, and I'm on the set at 7:05. And I'm thinking, oh, I did it, 7:05 is a great time. And I walk in there, and everybody's set up, and they're already rehearsing. And the Canadian first AD looks at me like this and said, you do never do this again, ever, ever. You're here before 7 o'clock. And so this is how we started working with this man.
Sorry. I have to apologize already.
Okay, so we've been friends ever since. Now, okay, let's start. So, Jeremy, you started out doing movies.
Yes.
And then, for some reason that I would like to know, you turned into television. I have asked you once, and you told me something that if you will not say, I will say. But I wanted to say, why did this happen? And then tell me a few of the differences that you can mention in the two worlds.
Well, I think the transition happened a little bit accidentally and a little bit intentionally. My original intention when I was starting to make things was to be a writer, director, make my own auteur style films, very personal films that would be released independently. I never thought about television really as a medium that I wanted to explore, because I think at that time, we're going back now a long time, before what we now call the golden age of television, which didn't exist then. And television was a very different kind of thing, especially where I come from. And so there was a real sort of kind of creative divide between people who worked in film and people who worked in TV. And so my intention was never to go in that direction, because I always wanted to do more intimate personal work and less commercial work. And what happened was that I made 2 films. I did an independent film that I wrote and directed called Eclipse, the one that showed here in Thessaloniki many years ago. And that film went to Berlin and Sundance. And then a number of years later, I made another film called The Five Senses, which went to Cannes and had a nice festival life as well, and an independent distribution life. But after my second film, something started to happen in the world, and something happened in my career. So in my career, what happened was that I started to get more interest after my movie went to Cannes from Hollywood, I guess you would say. And that interest was, I got an agent, I had people that were interested to meet with me after seeing my film. The film was kind of thought of as being something slightly more commercial than the stuff I had done in the past, even though it was still a very personal kind of film. So that started to open up a little bit of a door into something different, because I was still living in Canada at the time. My career was more Canadian and international focused. It wasn't really US focused. But then the other thing that was happening at the time was the change in television, which was the beginning of HBO, really. And I don't know if you remember, but HBO's tagline was always, "It's not TV, it's HBO." And they were starting with a different kind of ethos, which was that we're not trying to do what most network television does at that time in America, which was largely procedurals, would be like, you know, doctors, cops, lawyers, or soap operas or sitcoms. But this idea of doing more cinematic television, the things that had either like a larger cinematic canvas or that had more in-depth, complex, very personal kind of storytelling, that was new to television. And so the showrunner, the television writers were starting to develop more of a personality. And they came from a different kind of sensibility. They came from theater, or they came from cinema. They weren't like, you know, doing 50 years of television. They were kind of a new voice in TV. So you had people like Alan Ball, who created 6 Feet Under, and the creators of The Sopranos, and even Sex and the City, I would say, or The Wire. These kind of shows which were very new at the time. And so it was the beginning of this, which was still, nobody really experienced this as a movement yet. It was just like something interesting that was happening. So right at the beginning of that time, it's a long story, but one of the producers of 6 Feet Under was somehow involved in recognizing my film, The Five Senses. He knew about it before it came out, and he saw the film when it came out, and he really liked it, and he thought I would be a good fit for that show. So at the time, I was living in Toronto, and I was really not Hollywood focused at all. And I just got this phone call about this show called 6 Feet Under that I'd never heard about, and they had just done a pilot for HBO. It was their new thing, but they hadn't put the show into series yet. And I knew that Alan Ball, who just wrote American Beauty, which won the Oscar for the screenplay, he was the creator of the show, so I thought that was interesting. I didn't know any of the actors. It was all very new to me. But then they sent me the pilot to watch, and I almost died when I saw the pilot because it was so good. I don't know if you've seen the pilot for 6 Feet Under, but now it looks good. You know, 20 years ago, it was amazing because there was nothing like it out there. So I saw this, and to me, it was like a very strong voice. It was a writer's voice. It was a directorial vision. The cast was unbelievable, unknown, but unbelievable. And I thought, yes, this is something I could be very interested in doing. Even though it wasn't my own thing, I didn't write it. I felt like if I could write a TV show, I would write a show like this because it was so incredible. And it also kind of fit my sensibility in a strange way. So I said yes, and then I went to LA and did my first show in LA. And it was a fantastic experience. It was so great. It was really the closest thing to making a movie that you could imagine in the television world. Just the quality of it, the time that they took, the sophistication of the writing, the quality of the casting. It was just like an amazing experience across the board. So it really shifted my idea of what TV could be. And the nice thing was at that time is if you worked with HBO then, in those days, and they liked you, they didn't have like a gigantic roster of directors that they worked with. And a lot of film people yet were not going into TV, so that wasn't the biggest pool. And they didn't really want to work with the conventional TV directors who had done 100 hours of whatever the equivalent of Grey's Anatomy would be. So they were looking for kind of new, younger, fresher voices, I guess. But there were not a lot of people like me at that time who were interested in directing television. And I was only interested because I had done this show, and it was such a great experience. So after that, I got more opportunities from HBO and then from the other similar cable networks like Showtime to do very interesting, unusual shows. And I went at HBO, and from 6 Feet Under to Carnival, and then to Rome, and then to Boardwalk Empire, and many other shows. And they gave me opportunities to really kind of expand what I was doing. So I started doing like a show that was very similar to my own work, which was an intimate family drama with characters and a very contemporary, confined kind of storytelling, to doing incrementally bigger things. Like Carnival was period. It was set in the 1930s in the Dust Bowl, and it was about a traveling circus. And it also had supernatural elements. And then I went to Rome, which is about ancient Rome, that we shot in Cinecittà in Rome. So it gave me an opportunity to do a lot of things that were firsts for me, which I would not have gotten that opportunity in movies from making my own small little films. I would never have been asked to do a Roman epic. And so being able to do that was very exciting for me as a filmmaker. And at a very high level, was big budgets and high level cast and really good collaborators at every level. So that started to shift what I wanted to do. And I still wanted to make movies, and I came back here and made another movie with Lefty. And I call him Lefty. And yeah, so and then my career kind of went in two directions at the same time.
Let's talk a little bit about creative control and directors. I mean, you call yourself a producing director, and there's directors, there's many kind of different directors and showrunners. Can we sort of, define what happens and who decides about what, and what does a director of an episode does and what he doesn't do?
Right. Well, when you're an episode director, typically you're basically like a guest on a show. So the show is somebody else's. Somebody else has created this show. Somebody has established the template or the look of the show. Somebody else has more or less cast it. When I say more or less, that's because in your episode you might have new roles to fill, so you cast those roles. But typically the lead cast is already there. And the lead creative people, the production designer, the cinematographers, those people are there already. So you're kind of coming in, you're the one new person on the show. And you come in and your brief or your task really is to basically work within the vernacular of the show, like work within the language of the show that's been established, and hopefully to elevate it somehow. So I think what they're looking for is not somebody who's just going to do exactly what they've done before, but have somebody who respects what's been done before and can bring something fresh, a new eye, a new point of view, and a new way of working to the show, which they can find very exciting. So that's the job as a visiting director. Then, there's various roles between that even in show running, which is basically like sometimes you become like a favored guest director. And so you come back over and over and over again because everybody gets to know you and they like you and you have a good rapport with the cast and the crew and you become part of the family of the show. So like with 6 Feet Under, I came back every season for 5 seasons, or Boardwalk Empire every season, for many episodes. Game of Thrones, many episodes over time. So then you become part of the fabric of the show in that way. But you're still not like leading the show, but you have a big creative hand in how the show goes. Then the next step, if you want that step, because it's a choice to go there, is to become the producing director on a show, which in the past I was invited many times to do that, but I never felt like it was a great fit, because you have to really, really want to do the show. You have to want to do it over a long haul because it's a much bigger time commitment. When you're there on a show, it can be a year. If you stay longer, it can be 2 years. So it's a big commitment to something. And if you've created the look of the show, if you've established it by doing the pilot and got in very early, then that can be an attractive thing because then you own it the way you own a movie. But creatively, you feel like you own it. If you come in later, you have less. You're doing a huge job, but you feel less a sense of it's my vision. But now I'm choosing a little bit more to do something where I come in very early and I'm involved in the casting, I'm involved in the crewing, I'm involved in finding all the locations, and involved in every aspect of the creative coming together of the show. And so I did that, for example, on Station 11, which we'll show a clip from later, which is a show I did for HBO Max. And that was a show where I really felt, based on that script and the people involved in the show, that I wanted to have a big involvement in this show because it was very, very close to my heart. And that ended up being an amazing experience. Being there from the very beginning all the way until the end. It was a couple of years through the pandemic. But it was a very, very, very creatively satisfying situation. Now I'm doing it again on another show, Blade Runner, a very different kind of thing. But I'm in at the very, very, very beginning, and we're putting the whole thing together. And yeah, so it depends on things.
Sometimes a difficult relationship is one between the person who writes and the person who directs. Now, we all know that in cinema, sometimes the director writes, or you work much closer together with the writers. So how does it work? You know, the relation between them. Do you have a say? Do you like read and then get back and tell them, no, this is crap, write it again?
I never say this is crap. That's probably not a good thing to say, but, even if I think it. But no, I think, you know, I think one of the things that I bring to something is that I also am a writer. I have written movies, I've directed movies. I think when you can bring that to something, you have a little bit more credibility, and also people see you more as a collaborator on the writing side. And so for me, I like to be involved as not as a writer or co-writer, but as like a dramaturge, basically, where I'm working with the writer, helping to make it better, hopefully, to refine it, to ask questions about it, to interrogate it a little bit, to make it the best version of what it already is. So, and I think in the spirit of collaboration, I think that's a really good thing. I think showrunners really like that. That, you know, I'm thinking like a director, but I'm also thinking like a writer. And then you have many different kinds of contributions to make to the larger thing. So yes, I think to work as a collaboration between the director, showrunner, director, or even if you're just a director for an episode, you always have what's called a tone meeting, where you meet the writer, you go through the script page by page. You know, you come prepared with questions like, why is this character doing this? Or, you know, maybe this line of dialogue isn't the best way to do this, or maybe this scene should go before that scene, or maybe this scene should be set somewhere else, or like whatever you bring to the thing, or you tell them how you're thinking of shooting it and seeing if that jives what they think about it. It's that kind of collaboration is very helpful and very useful, I think.
One of the things that tires me personally every time is talking about budgeting with some sort of producer. I mean, in Greece, the broadcaster pays for everything, and so you have like a producer that does the job, but he doesn't necessarily, you know, put in the money. But this is where you go and you say, I need a Steadicam shot, and he says, oh no, we don't have the money to do that, or I need like 50 extras, blah blah blah. So my question is, how much are you involved in budgeting, and is it like something that's closed when you enter the show and this is the money, you cannot, you know, go over, and we have to see what you need? How does it work?
The budget's almost always closed when you come in. Like there's no more conversation about more money at that point. But what happens is the allocation of the resources you're very involved in. So, you know, the decisions about what you're going to do, where you're going to put the emphasis, where you're going to, you know, maybe go do something bigger than they expected because you know you can do something smaller over there. You know, we call it horse trading, basically. So it's like, yes, I'll give you this, but you give me that. And that's where, as a director, you come in, and you have to work within certain parameters, but within that, there hopefully is some kind of flexibility. So let's say, like, you need an extra day of shooting. That's a big ask. So if you want an extra day, then you have to find ways you're going to save money in other areas to do that. Or if you want a certain piece of equipment, that's a smaller ask, and usually they could just move things around and make that possible. So, but yes, I'm very involved in the budgeting, because I always want to know, you know, why are they saying no about this? And maybe there's a creative solution to make them to say yes. Because the initial thing always, if you ask for anything, they're always going to push back a little bit. But then if you say, well, I can save you over here if you let me have this over here, then they're like, okay. As long as the total bigger picture works, but then you really have to know what you're dealing with and why they're saying what they're saying.
Can we please roll the longer clip, not the short one, the longer one? So this is a clip from The Fugitive Pieces, the film that Jeremy made in Greece, and that's where we met. So we have two clips to show. I would like to show the longer one, and then I can ask you about directing.
I think we're just going to show the shorter one on that one.
Oh, no longer? I want to ask you. Okay, yeah. Let's show the shorter one then. Okay. Oh, that was Hydra, unfortunately. I remember that shot. Okay, two questions. One is, how do you cast? Like, what's your, you know, I think every director has a specific way of casting, and especially how do you cast people that you don't quite, you know, speak the same language? I mean, she has to, you know, speak in Greece. But let's talk about casting first.
I should say first, two of the actors from Fugitive Pieces are here, Yorgos and Danai. Themis is not here, unfortunately. Casting, I always feel like you're looking for the essence of a person. It's Like many times where I have an idea of what a person looks like in my head is not the person we end up casting, because visual is not what it's about. It's about what the person projects from their soul in a way. And so you're looking for a kind of empathy, a kind of something happening behind the eyes, I always say. It's like somebody can be beautiful, but if there's nothing going on there, not to say that everybody has something going on there, but I mean, for an actor, there has to be something special, something different that projects through the camera lens and onto the screen. And I've had interesting experience sometimes where I'm casting, sometimes when you're casting, you have like you're videotaping and you have a little monitor and you're looking at them in real life and then you look on the monitor. And I've had this experience where I'm watching them and I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I look at the monitor, I'm like, oh my God. And it's like, because the camera just sees something that you don't see in real life necessarily. And that's kind of a magical quality that some actors have. And not every actor has it. So, and that's why sometimes, this might be controversial, but sometimes you see somebody on the stage, but they don't necessarily have it on camera. Sometimes they have it on camera. They don't have it on stage because it's different skills. But in any event, I think what you're looking for is something unexpected. You always have some idea of what you're looking for in the character, but you want to be surprised at the same time. You want to see something that you didn't expect to see. And they bring that extra something. And then to me, it doesn't matter like what language the actors are speaking, or because many of my favorite actors are foreign to me, so from any other place in the world. They can be from Japan or from France or Italy or Greece or wherever it is. It's what they're communicating is beyond language, So it's I don't know. It's you're looking for something very ephemeral. It's very hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. Like I can tell you with the boy, the child actor in this film, we looked at hundreds of kids, like literally hundreds of kids. Thousands maybe, because we had, he's supposed to be Polish, and in this film he's adopted by a Greek man, so he learns how to speak a bit of Greek in the film. But he's meant to be from Poland. He doesn't speak English as a first language. In the course of the film, he learns a bit of English and he learns a bit of Greek, learns a bit of Yiddish, we looked in the Czech Republic, we looked in Poland, we looked everywhere in the world. I'm not kidding. Like we looked in England, we looked in America, we looked in Canada. Thousands of tapes of kids. And we were getting very close to shooting, and I thought, we're never going to find this kid. And when we just completely random got this tape, and I didn't know where it came from. Czech Republic, actually. And I thought he was Czech when I saw it, because there was no interview portion on the audition tape. He just did the dialogue. But as soon as I saw his face and the way he spoke the dialogue with such a kind of perfect, natural, I mean, you can see he's a beautiful kid. And I just was like, that's the kid. I was like, after hundreds and hundreds of tapes, I was like, that's the one. And when you know, and that's it. There's no, I actually don't believe that there's 100 people for every part. I think there's one. And you have to find the one. And I never stop until I find the one.
How different is it directing a feature to directing a TV series? Like a process, because, in an episode you have around 10 days, maybe 10, 12 days. And in a movie you have like 2 months maybe. So does anything change when you walk on set and you have to have a day's work?
In terms of the acting with them?
Or the directing? Yeah, your the shots or
Yeah, I mean, TV tends to be very quick. You don't have a huge amount of time for rehearsal. You don't have a huge amount of time for shooting. And so everything is the same as in features, but it's more compressed. So, and I have my own way of working in television, which is that I do something that not many TV directors do, but I don't insist on table reads or things like that, because I don't think they're that useful, where you read the script for everybody with the whole cast. But for me, I have to have meetings with the actors ahead of time. Not rehearsals, but meetings where we go through the script together. And we go page by page, scene by scene, and we just talk about every scene. And we talk about what it's about and how is it for the actor, and does it read well? Would they want to make some changes? What are they thinking about? What are they having problems with? How does it fit into the bigger picture? I always have this, even if I'm just doing an episode of a TV show, we do that. And I will also try to bring together actors who have scenes together, to read the scenes together. Not to do a full rehearsal, but just to go through them and see how they play and see how the chemistry is and if we need to make some changes. So for me, it's like, it gives the actors at least some kind of preparation with the director where we can really talk about things and see how everybody's feeling about everything and get inside the script a little bit so that when we get to the set, then we can move much quicker because we've had all these conversations beforehand. And so when we're there, we know what we're doing. Some things might come up still because in the performing of it, you discover things or you find things. But you've had so much groundwork that you have less issues. You're not going to have like disagreements. You're not going to have people saying, I don't know what this scene is about and I don't know what I'm doing, which can happen if you're not really, kind of prepared for it. So for me, I like to just kind of give everybody the comfort that we've been through this and, and also comfort with me because sometimes I'm a new director. They don't know me that well and I want them to get to know me a little bit so there's not this kind of discomfort at the beginning of getting to know somebody. Because, being an actor makes you very vulnerable, You have to expose yourself, and if you're going to expose yourself, it's at least good to know who you're exposing yourself in front of. So I think it helps them to feel more comfortable on the first day that it's not a brand new relationship that they're starting.
So at some point you, I think, directed the third episode of a show that Martin Scorsese was directing the pilot, and this is Boardwalk Empire. I think you have a few nice stories to tell us about meeting with Martin and directing the third episode instead of and him directing the pilot.
Yeah, okay, there's a lot. I was hired to do Boardwalk Empire, but I had not seen anything. I hadn't seen like a photograph, a foot of film, nothing. And I knew it was a big show. I knew Scorsese was directing it. It was all very scary. And then I came to start the show, and I hadn't seen the show at all. And there was one more director in between Scorsese and me, who was named Tim Van Patten, who's directed a lot of HBO things, a very, very good director. And he was the director in between. So he was shooting when I arrived, because Scorsese was finished his pilot, but he was still editing it. And so Tim was directing, and I saw some of his dailies that he was shooting, which were very beautiful. But I didn't really know the show. I hadn't seen the pilot. So we were getting closer to shooting, and I said to the producer, I really need to see the pilot. Like, I need to know what the show is. And he's like, oh, Marty's working on it. He doesn't want anyone to see it. And I was like, how am I going to direct this show? I've never seen it. And so he said, okay, I'll talk to Marty. So he goes and talks to Marty. We're on a first-name basis. And so Marty agrees to show me and the next director who's coming after me his pilot of the show. But we have to watch it at his office, in his screening room, with him. So, okay. So we go make a pilgrimage to his office in New York, and he has a little screening room, very nice screening room, that he keeps very cold because he wants you to stay awake. And you have to have a blanket when you're watching. They have blankets on every chair. And so we sit and we watch the show, and I don't know if you've seen the pilot for Boardwalk Empire, but it's pretty great. And it's like a huge movie. Like, it's big. And it was very expensive and took a long time to make. And I can tell you, I guess it's probably not a secret, but it was like, 33 days to shoot the pilot, and it was $35 million, which is even a lot now, but then it was even more. And so to give you a comparison, that was for 1 hour, 33 days, $35 million, and then I'm coming in to do an episode in 10 days with $10 million, which also sounds like a lot of money, but it's not 35 million. And and it's the same show. It's not like it's suddenly the show becomes 3 people in a room talking. No, it's not. It's huge. So it's the same show for 1/3, and I've just watched this hour with Martin Scorsese, talking through the whole thing and why he's doing this and choice. And he's a genius, of course, brilliant. Like, he's a genius about music. He's a genius about cinematography. He's a genius about production design. He's a genius about casting and directing. He's a genius about everything. And so it's like you're just hearing all this as we're watching the show, and it's amazing. And he spent many, many months working on it. We, of course, have 2 weeks to prepare it. And so it's 3 weeks maybe. But it was, we had this like amazing thing. And I was just like a bit kind of, I don't know, it was a lot. And so after, I'm with the other director, his name is Alan, and we leave Scorsese, we go to the elevator doors close, and Alan looks at me and he goes, "We're so fucked." And, and it was like that because, excuse my language, but it was like, yeah, how are we going to do that? That's impossible. Like, he's Scorsese, those resources, we're not Scorsese. It's, but it was an amazing kind of challenge in a way to find our own way, with the experience. By that point, I had been directing TV for a while, and, you just kind of, I don't know, you figure things out. And that's the lesson, is you don't have to, I can't be Scorsese, and that's not what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something else. And it will still feel like the same show somehow. But I won't be able to do like this shot that takes, an entire day to do one shot, which goes on the boardwalk and into somebody's house and goes, and then people are fighting and goes, and it's like, I won't be able to do that, but I can do other things that look great and amazing that just are not that. So, that's kind of what that was. It ends up being an amazing experience, and I had a very close relationship with that show for many years, and it was great.
And now the Game of Thrones fans question. I have to do that. Sorry. Okay. So you get a phone call, but late in the show, not like in the first season, right?
Well, actually, I got a phone call in the second season to do the show, and I had a meeting to do the show, and it went very well. And I was going to do the show. And I actually, that show is unlike any other show in the way that they prepare and the amount of time you have, because it is, you do 2 episodes of that show, 2 hours, and it's like doing a movie. It really is like a big movie. So you need months to prepare. So months ahead of time, you go, I was living in LA at the time, you go to Ireland where they shoot, and you go to Croatia, and you go to Spain or wherever they're shooting, and you check all the locations, and you start the sets being built, and everything takes a lot of lead time. So I did all that, and I had I don't know if I can say, if you remember, season 2, there's a big battle with green fire on boats. I don't know if you remember this, but it's a very famous sequence. I was supposed to direct this episode, and so I had done all the preparation. It was a huge visual effects extravaganza, and very complicated. And I think it was the first time they were doing something like that on Game of Thrones, because the first season didn't do huge stuff like that. So it was a lot. And anyway, I prepared the whole show, and then very unfortunately, sadly, my father became ill, and I couldn't end up doing the show. So I left the show at the time. And they were very, very, very kind about it. And it was a difficult situation because I prepared the whole thing, and then another director had to come and take over. So that's what happened. But so all that is to say that my relationship goes much farther back with them. But the opportunity to actually go back to the show didn't happen again until season 5. And I mean, after 2, I wasn't sure if I would ever go back to the show because of the circumstances, but I did go back in 5. And then it became a very, very, very happy experience for me because I love everybody on the show. It was an amazing creative experience, amazing people, amazing everything. And it's, I was with it I did 6 episodes over 3 seasons, 3 seasons. And then now I just filmed another show with the same creators called The 3-Body Problem. That's going to be on Netflix in February, I think. So we have a nice relationship that's ongoing with a lot of the same people.
So you've been doing this for, since the 90s, I guess. Like doing TV, I mean. Yeah. And you're still doing it. Mm-hmm. And my question is, TV is rising like a lot, like it's very high now. Mm-hmm. What are the changes, both in maybe directing trends or storytelling trends, through the decades? Where are we now, and where were we then?
I think that we're a bit at an inflection point. I think with TV or TV streaming, because of streaming actually, and I think that the pay television model, which is what HBO was, where you pay a subscription and you get to see a different kind of show. That whole HBO thing is not TV, it's HBO. It's like that was one idea of what this was, which was that there's a kind of boutique version, more bespoke, more targeted, more elevated, version of what, like somewhere sitting between TV and movies is kind of what the idea was, where you can have ambition in storytelling, you can have ambition in scope, you can do things that haven't been done before, you could experiment more. That was sort of the feeling of HBO and Showtime at the time. And even AMC that did Mad Men, and there were new shows, but each new show was a bit of an event. That was the difference, where if HBO only made like 5 or 6 shows a year, they didn't do like 100. So every time a new HBO show came out, that was a big deal. And people would stay home on Sunday night, usually, when they premiered the new shows, and they would watch the new HBO show. So, I remember we had like appointment television was you're going to watch 6 Feet Under and Sex and the City and The Sopranos, and there's your Sunday. And everybody did that. Everybody stayed home and they watched these shows at the same time. Because they would release it one at a time, one a week, and it wasn't there on streaming available forever. You just had one chance to see it. So that was very different. Now, as we all know, there's 10,000 shows on multiple platforms, and you can swipe through 10 million things until you find something you want to watch, and it can be Love is Blind, or it can be whatever, And so it's a different kind of thing. Personally, I think it's too much. Too much choice is never a good thing. And I think it becomes a little less special. And it's very hard to get people in the world to focus on one thing. Like, I think Game of Thrones is probably the last thing. I can't imagine another show where everyone in the world is watching the same thing at the same time, which was literally what was happening with that show, where they would release it in, I don't know, like 150 countries on the same day, each episode, and everybody was watching it. I mean, not everyone in the world, but a lot of people were watching it. And now it's like you can go to Netflix and maybe you'll watch it today and maybe you'll watch it tomorrow and maybe you'll watch 5 episodes at the same time. And, it's a different experience for the audience. And it's a different experience for how we absorb, I don't want to say the word content because I hate that, but the way you absorb audiovisual material. And so I think that's a big change. And I think you can still find those amazing shows. Like every year, there's always a few that kind of poke through and they're creatively exciting and they're, from a filmmaking point of view, they're thrilling and they're beautifully written, whatever. They're things that kind of like rise to the top. It's harder to find them sometimes, and you usually find them because people are talking about them and people are discovering them, and not because you go to a platform and that's where you're going to find the great shows. Like in the past, you'd go to HBO, and even if you didn't love every show was really interesting, and you would probably 7 times out of 10, you're going to love what you're going to see. Now, you go to Netflix, and maybe 1 time out of 30, you're going to find something you love. And I don't know, not to, I work with Netflix, I work with everybody, but you know what I mean. So it's different. The landscape is very, very different. And I think that it will reach a threshold at some point. Like, I think they can't continue to produce at this rate. I think the economics of streaming, I think they're discovering now, as you can see with the strikes happening, where the streamers got into this business very quickly. And I think the economics of it were not so clear at the beginning. Now the economics are becoming more clear, and they cannot keep doing this, like thousands of shows and throwing money at it, and it's not going to sustain.
So, because I know that in the room we have many young filmmakers, what are they to do if there's no more content? Because I can see the problem. Like, what are the stories to tell, and do you have to go local or you have to go global, or what is happening there? I mean, what's your advice to a younger filmmaker?
Well, I think one very promising thing with streaming, Netflix in particular, but will be with others as well, is the rise in international shows that can travel. This is new because, first of all, I know it sounds very kind of whatever, but Americans did not like to watch subtitles generally. That was a sad fact. And so to get Americans to watch a foreign show with subtitles was, and they also don't like subtitles because that's not part of, dubbing, because that's not part of the culture. They didn't grow up with that. So for foreign shows showing globally, that was always a real challenge. There was a perception things didn't travel, and that's really changed now. Like, you have hit shows from France, from Korea, from wherever, and everybody in the world is watching them. That's a very positive development, I think. because now it's like, particularly because people want to find, in all that junk that's out there, they want to find the really interesting things. And sometimes the really interesting stuff comes from corners of the world that they didn't expect. So you can have a Squid Game, or you can have, you know, Call My Agent from France, 10%. You know, it's a small show, but it was a gigantic hit everywhere. So it's like it doesn't matter anymore. Like now it's much more global, and I think that's a very, very good thing. So I think for younger filmmakers, that's encouraging, because you can do a show like 10%, which is just really about agents working in a talent agency in Paris. And it's, you know, it's not a huge thing, but it happens to have stars in it, but that's sort of the gimmick of the show. But it really doesn't matter, like, what you do, as long as it's interesting and it's fresh. And, you know, there's a show which is on Netflix now, I don't know if you have it here, called Beef. Have you seen the show? Beef, which is like an all Asian American cast, most of them not very well known. The creators are not very well known. The show is great, and it's a big success for Netflix, and it's made for nothing. And it doesn't matter. It's just the show is so fresh and interesting and clever and funny and dramatic, and has a very interesting subtext, what it's about. So I think it's about creativity still. I mean, it's always been about creativity. But I think the fact that, you know, the industry is shifting doesn't change that paradigm. That's still the same. Like, if you have an amazing idea, an amazing execution, and you're passionate about what you're doing, there's always a place. You just have to find it, you know. But that's what it starts from. It doesn't matter where or when.
I will not ask the number around. Beef is a very low budget thing. I don't want to know.
Well, it's relative. I have no idea
like
what it costs.
5 million or something, maybe.
I don't know, but the thing is, it's a contemporary show with a small cast and no big stars, and limited number of locations. It's not the ambition of the show is not that huge. It's just very, very clever storytelling.
So you've literally gone through most TV as we know it, and you know, my question is, what are your favorite shows? I've asked you this before. I don't know if you will give the same answer, but like, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody has favorite shows, I think, for different reasons and different things. Sometimes you want to watch some kind of show, and sometimes you want to watch another kind of show. I think for me, the ones that stick are, especially now, I should say maybe at this point in my life where I want to feel something when I'm watching something. So to me, it doesn't matter if it's spectacle or whatever. I don't really care about that. I just want to be emotionally moved by something. So Beef, weirdly, even though it's sort of a comedy, was quite moving, actually. There's a little show that came out of Ireland called Normal People a couple years ago, which we love. It's a story about the first love of two young people that goes over in a certain number of years, and it's one of the greatest shows ever. And it's, you know, on paper, it's like, what is this? Nothing. But actually, in execution, it's one of the most beautiful things you could ever watch. So, you know, for me...
I meant your shows, Jeremy.
Oh, my show.
Not other people's shows.
Oh, I didn't... Well, you have to clarify. For me... you know, it's hard to separate things because I have the experience of having made something, and like, you know, doing Rome was such an epic experience for me personally. You know, working with this great British cast on this gigantic thing, working on the sets that Fellini was working, like, it was, you know, it was like as a filmmaker, it's a dream to do something like that. So that's the experience of it. I guess as shows, when I look back retrospectively, strangely, my first show, 6 Feet Under, is probably one of the things I'm the most proud of, because I feel like that show, even though it's about a family, it's a show about everything. It's about life and death and choices that we make in our life, and knowing that life is short. What are you going to do with your life? And, you know, it's, you know, every episode you laugh and you cry, and I mean, what more do you want? Like, I think that's a show about everything. So, and amazingly, it's out on Netflix as of this week. So this is also the changing landscape thing where shows can kind of travel beyond their original network. So it was on HBO for years and years and years. Now they sold it to Netflix. So more people can watch it, which is great. So I would say that. And then I would say there's weirdly a kind of direct line to one of the most recent shows I did, which was Station 11, which we have a clip from, which I don't know how many people here have seen Station 11? Not enough people. Okay, so... Okay. Well,
Vi okej.
I hope you will all watch it. I know it's maybe difficult to see here somehow, but if you can find it and steal it, or watch whatever, it's worth it. I don't care if you steal it. And I feel like that's because to me that show, first of all, it's very innovative in its storytelling. It's very unusual, but it is a show about everything, about life and death and what's important. And I won't say I guarantee you, but I hope you will cry when you watch the show because it's very, very, very affecting. And but you will also laugh and you will also enjoy. It's not depressing, but I think for me, it's like I was moved every day making that show. I was moved when I watched the show. I'm very proud of the show. I was also a producer on that show. So yeah, I think those two polarities. Yeah. Yeah, we have a clip there.
Let's roll the clip from the show.
It's a bit longer, this one.
Hope you cry. It's amazing how he can get you glued on your chair without knowing what the hell is going on.
I should have contextualized that a little bit, I think. But,
I can't.
Well, I should say that, it's a story about a pandemic, weirdly, that was written, and we started filming before the actual pandemic. And this character, Miranda, is a graphic novelist, and she's dying in this pandemic in a hotel room. And she has information that she's sending to this pilot during the pandemic that if the people on the plane are infected, and if they let the people off the plane, they're going to kill everybody in the airport. And so she's telling, and this is something we only find out quite late in the show, that she had this role in this saving these people's lives in the airport. And she, as she's dying, and this is her last thing to save these people, she's entering her graphic novel, which is called Station 11, which is about an astronaut, and it's a very complicated story, but she's entering this her creation when she dies, and that's what this is about.
Okay, last question from me, and to get back to Thessaloniki Film Festival, is I really like your Facebook posts actually, because you are still watching movies, not now movies only, but also movies from the past. And this is really nice, because there's this whole talk about the cinema dying, cinema as we know it dying, all these things. And I would like you to, tell me a little bit about this, if you think cinema is dying in the cinema theater, and a very few of your favorite people all along, filmmakers or films or anything.
Well, what Lefteris is referring to is I used to be a film critic also. And I found more recently, like as I watch movies, I like to write about them a little bit because it makes me interrogate them a little bit and think about why a movie affects me or doesn't affect me. And so if you check my Facebook or Instagram, you'll see some very random film reviews of some movies that are new, some movies that I just found online and watched. Like recently watched a couple of Agnes Varda movies and I'm writing about those or whatever. And it just helps me kind of like coalesce my thoughts around something. So, I grew up as a film lover, and I went to the Toronto Film Festival my whole youth. It was very influential for me, seeing movies from all around the world when I was a young, aspiring filmmaker. And, like I said before, TV was not where I thought I was going to end up, really, and movies was always my thing. So I still am a great lover of cinema and great lover of great filmmaking and filmmakers. In terms of the ones who affected me the most, at the beginning, like, it's not an accident that my first movie was called Eclipse, because Antonioni made a movie called L'Eclisse, which is also Eclipse, and Antonioni was a very big influence on me. But I was attracted to many, many things. Like, there was an Australian new wave when I was quite young, which was like Bruce Beresford and Peter Weir and all kinds of great filmmakers. And there was German New Wave with Fassbinder. There was, I don't know, like to me it's like I can find filmmakers all over cinema history that have inspired me and excited me. It's hard to pick a few that mean the most, but I do find now that the filmmakers that I'm responding to, again, like in television, are the ones where I'm really moved by the movies. And so they can be small movies or big movies, they can be ambitious or modest, but you know, if I feel something, then I get excited.
Let's start the Q&A. We have mics here. Someone, maybe? Do we have mics or not? Or we just, okay, we're waiting. Okay, sorry. Somebody here in the front.
Hi, hi. Thank you for your presentation, both of you, Jeremy. I have two questions. First is because it says the evolution of contemporary television. So, what do you think is that? Do you think it's conceptual? Is it visual? Is it narrative? You know, the actual evolution. Because I don't know if you didn't say much about the.
I think it's everything. Like, I think Station 11, like this clip, you would never have seen that on television 10 years ago, or streaming, like, which didn't exist. But like this kind of poetic storytelling, which is, you know, crosses across time and into fantasy even. It's like, it's a very kind of adventurous way of telling a story. And if you watch the whole thing, the way it uses sound and the way it cuts between different narrative arcs, it's quite fresh. So I think there's in that thing that we're now in, where there's like millions of things being made, and only some things cut through. The question is, how do you cut through? And you can cut through by doing something like Game of Thrones, which is like a sort of epic fantasy that just appeals to a huge number of people. Or you can do something like Beef cuts through, or The Bear, which is another show very popular right now. It's a small show that takes place in a restaurant. How many people have seen The Bear? Oh, good, more people have seen that. So it's a very small show that has cut through because it's just, I don't know, there's something about the tone of it or whatever that's very sharp. And so I think to me the evolution is like now everybody's trying to find a way to push, you know, the boundaries a little bit. There's always still going to be like, most of it's going to be just more of the same. Like you're going to have more mystery shows, dead bodies, you know, a lot of those kind of shows. You're going to have whatever. But I think these kind of shows, which I'm always looking for, which are the shows that interest me, are the ones that are trying to find an audience by being different, not by being more of the same. So I think that's a big evolution.
The second one is, have you ever been involved, because you said sometimes you're early into the development process, have you ever dealt with something that requires a journalistic like article investigation kind of thing, and how do you integrate that into the dramaturgy or the, you know, the...
I don't think I ever have done that, actually, like that based on a true story, investigative. I'm trying to think. I've done a lot of things, but I don't think I've done that. No.
Sorry.
I don't know why. No. I'm sorry too.
I mean, even Game of Thrones doesn't have like a research behind it. That's
research, yes.
Yeah, research. Okay, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Research, absolutely. You know, every period show, first of all, absolutely. There's a huge amount of research, which is like, I remember when we did Rome, for example, we had one historical advisor who basically would be everything. Like, you know, you have a dinner with the emperor, and so, you know, who sits next to who and what do they eat, and do the servants hang around the table or do they go back, or like, you know, who comes in first, and like who gets up first to leave, like how do people dress for this kind of thing? Do you sit on the floor? Do you sit in a chair? Who sits at the head table? Like, you can imagine that amplified for every single scene in the show. It's like, you know, if you have a bunch of people on horses, who's in the front and who's in the back, and, you know, what are they carrying, and like everything, costumes, art department, props, like customs, all those things in great detail. So you have to become like a little bit of an expert in everything. But you have many people advising you on all those things, and every department does their own research. The head costume designer, the head props person, the head production designer, everybody's becomes a professor for the period of time of the movie. Other kinds of research, anytime a character is playing a certain profession, and that doesn't have to be an investigative journalist, but if they're playing anything, a doctor, they're playing a lawyer, how does a lawyer talk? How would you express yourself in this situation? Like, how would you handle a situation like this? You're dealing with somebody who's just been through a crime, and then what's the first meeting you have with that person? I'm writing something now, a limited series, and there's a child who's traumatized, so we have scenes with therapists, and what do those scenes look like, and how would a therapist actually talk to a child who's been through something like that, and different kinds of therapy, and so everything requires absolutely a ton of research, and sometimes it's not even a professional thing. It's just like you have characters who go through certain things, and you want to talk to people who've been through those kind of things, and see how it affected them or not. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Anyone.
Yes, so my question was about your start in the filmmaking career, in your filmmaking career, and how did you get involved and integrated into this industry?
Into Greece.
What?
Oh, into the industry, not Greece industry.
No. In how did you get involved in the film industry in your character?
Yeah. Well, for me, it started very incrementally. Like, I went to film school, so very traditional kind of thing, and I made one short film that became very successful in school, which was a very small film that was based on a play that I went to see a one-man show actually, and I really liked it. The script was fantastic. It was very funny, and it was clever and moving, and the performance was great. It wasn't an obvious thing to adapt into a film because it's just one guy on stage with no props. But the material was very, very strong, and I thought I could do something with it. So I approached the writer-performer, and he was open to being filmed. And so I kind of reconceived it as a film, and we made it, and it was very successful. And I won an award for the best student film in the country at the time, and I went to the Toronto Film Festival, and then, so I was still in school, but that had some success. And then I made another film in my next year in school, and that also had some success. But then I came out of school, and I had these two films that I'd made, which people liked and had some, attention. But I really didn't know anything about the industry at all. I didn't know how you made a feature. I didn't know anybody. I was in Canada. I wasn't in LA. It was like, Canada was kind of not a lot happening in the film world at that time. So it took a while to kind of like figure out how to proceed. So I just started to write a feature script. And I managed to, like, through the government agencies, get a little money to write the script. And I didn't need very much money to live at the time. So I was like, okay, I scrape it together and I'll keep working on my thing. And so I spent a lot of time on the script, and it never got made. It was too ambitious as a first feature. And I spent years on that, which is sad. And then after that, I thought, okay, I'm going to make a film I can make. So I wrote a very small movie, which was Eclipse, which was basically 10 actors, 10 scenes, and each scene is a two-hander. So each scene is like a short film. And then one character from the first scene goes and meets another character in the second scene, and that new character meets the next scene. The last character meets the first character. And it was, for me, I thought, this is not a hard thing to find a way to make. And it was contemporary, and I could cast it with actors who I knew from the theater world, and, just make a very personal film. And that ended up being very successful because it was very modest. It didn't need a lot to be successful, but it was also something I could accomplish with the resources that I had. And then, one thing leads to another, and so then I made that film, and that went to Sundance, and it went to Berlin, and then, it doesn't happen that fast, like, I have to say honestly. Like, it was 5 years until my next movie, which was a little more ambitious and a little bigger budget. But, you kind of, one thing at a time, you keep going, and for me, that's how it worked. But I have to say, one of the biggest parts of it was community. I think, like, I was in Toronto, I grew up in Toronto, I didn't know the film industry, but I knew people my age who were trying to make things. And so we all helped each other quite a lot. I'm sure you probably have equivalent communities here, whether in Thessaloniki or in Athens, hopefully, where you have other colleagues or friends who are trying to do things. And like I worked as, I don't know if you know Atom Agoyan, you know him? Yeah, who made Exotica, The Sweet Hereafter. So we kind of grew up together. He was in one film school, I was in a different one, but we knew each other. And so I was like the production manager on his first feature. And he was sort of like my mentor on my first feature. And we, you know, we've known each other for, I don't want to say how many years, but many, many years. And we're still very close friends. But that you find your people, and that's how you start. Because you can't do it by yourself. You have to have a community, and that's the thing.
We have time for another 2 questions.
Hi, Mr. Podeswa. First of all, thank you for being here and giving us a glimpse of this very exciting world. I'm Polly from Flix and Nova TV, and we have been carrying your shows because we're the HBO Greek home, kind of. My question is that 25, 30 years ago, television used to play it safe because it was going into the houses of everybody and it had a mass audience. All the subject matter, all the production values are kind of timid. Now, if you want to see something daring or dark or provocative, you have to go to the movies. And now the mainstream cinema seems to be the timid one, you know, giving money only to franchises and Marvel films and all this discussion, while the exciting scripts, the exciting characters, the more dark material is on TV. I would like a little comment on that, and if you see everything going back to the movies as well, or is it something very cemented in a way?
Yeah, well, I think there's a very clear reason for those things. I think in the old days, when there was no cable or streaming, television was free and it was in your house. And the idea of people making television was to appeal to the broadest audience possible, because there was only one metric for success. It was like, did you have 30 million people watching it, or 2 million, or 100 million people watching it? And they were in their house when it was aired, you know, one time only. And so when you're trying to reach the biggest audience possible, you brush with a very wide brush. And so you don't want to offend anybody, you don't want to do anything too depressing, you don't want to do anything to anything, because, you know, even if it's too quirky or too unusual, like then that segment of people is not going to watch. So you do something you think everybody is going to like. So you do like a show where doctors are saving somebody's life, and it's like every week. Or it's, you know, you're solving the case every week, or you're whatever it is. And that's, you know, maybe, you know, there are certain discerning audience that's not going to love that, but there will be way more people who will say, yeah, it's comfort TV. When I have my dinner, I'm going to watch this show, and it's, you know, it has a nice closed end, and it's, you know, that's episodic television. Then when streaming or cable became a thing, it was the alternative to that. And it was like, we don't need 100 million people to watch it. For us to be successful, we need 5 million people to watch it. And then you can narrowcast. And you can say, well, we know 5 million people are going to like 6 Feet Under at the time. Even though it's a weird show has fantasy sequences and it's about death. And like, you know, that would never show on a network, never in a million years. But HBO is like, okay, it doesn't have to appeal to 100 million people. Maybe we'll find an audience for that. And the critics will get excited about it, and we have a bit of attention and buzz, and, you know, you can have a success of a different kind. And so then that existed for a long time. And I think we're still kind of in that period. But what happened with movies was the cost of making and releasing movies became so expensive that, like, now to release a movie costs the same as to make it. It's the same budget. Like, if you spend 100 million to make it, it costs 100 million to release it. And so everything just goes amplified. So you have to be very risk averse when you're making a movie, if you're a studio, for example. There used to be a philosophy that you could make like one big action movie, and you could make a little comedy, and you could make a romantic movie, and you could make, as a studio, if you were MGM or Warner Brothers, you'd make a slate, and it had all these different kinds of movies. Now, if you release a small comedy or a small romantic movie, it costs the same as to release X-Men or something. So it's like, I mean, not exactly, but it's a lot. So it's harder to take a risk on these movies if you don't think they're going to appeal to everybody. So, like, why go to all that effort to make a movie that's going to maybe make $20 million when you can make a little more effort and maybe make $500 million? So the economics doesn't work anymore for them. So those kind of movies, like if you're old enough to remember, like Kramer versus Kramer or Ordinary People or whatever, or even like Reese Witherspoon romantic comedies, or they're not making those movies anymore because they're not big enough, like to. And now it just has to, it can't just be a success in North America, it has to be a success in the world. So no language barrier, no cultural sensitivity barriers, no, it's like, you know, you have like Iron Man, it doesn't matter where you are, it's Iron Man. So it's a weird time for movies because, you know, 7 out of 10 screens in America are Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Iron Man, you know, every man, you know. And so it's like, however, there are still artists who are working and making things. And, you know, there's this movie that won the Palme d'Or this year called After the Fall, which is an amazing movie. It's so great. And it's, you know, it will reach an audience. It won't be that huge an audience, but that filmmaker, she had a passion to make this movie and she made it, and it's a great movie. And it's, you know, I think that's what's going to happen. You'll get more segmenting of the audience. So there'll be those huge things that aren't going anywhere, sadly. And then the middle is kind of missing. I think that's gone. And then there's the art house, which hopefully after the pandemic, people are coming back to, and there'll be some movies that excite people and people go back to the cinema to see something else. So I think it's the polarities will exist now without the middle so much.
Last question.
Hi, Jeremy. How was it like working with Michael C. Hall on 6 Feet Under and Dexter, my personal favorite show?
Amazing. Michael's an incredible actor.
Charismatic.
And when he did 6 Feet Under, he had never done a TV show before. He was a theater actor. And interesting, I've seen Michael on stage. I saw him in a one-man show, and it was unbelievable, like really unbelievable. He's so good. He was like a revelation to me. Like when I saw the pilot of 6 Feet Under before I did the show, I was like, where did these people come from? Like I never saw them, but they were so amazing. Like Michael and like all the actors, like Frances Conroy plays the mother, Lauren Ambrose is the sister. I mean, they're amazing. And it was just Alan Ball who did American Beauty. He comes from theater, and he has incredible taste about actors and judgment about people. And he put together this incredible ensemble of people that were never seen before. But they were already acting for ages. I mean, Michael had done stage work for years before this. And so they bring so much, you know, to something like 6 Feet Under, where they get to really juicy parts where they can really sink their teeth in, and you can see what they're capable of. If he had been cast in something else, I don't think you would have recognized how great an actor he is. But it was the match of him and the role and the show. It's, you know, made him famous. And Dexter, again, was like, for me, amazing because, like, I worked with Michael on 6 Feet Under, and, you know, I saw him in a certain way. I did not see him that way at all. But then to see that he could do that so convincingly, like, his range is unbelievable. So he's very skilled, like, as an actor. Like, you know, I say, like, actors have tools in their toolbox. He has a lot of tools, a lot. And he can do anything, really. He also he does musicals, you know, in Broadway. Like he sings and he dances.
He has a band.
What's that?
He has a band, The Prisons Goes, its name. He's
What's
a singer. He's a singer in a band.
Oh, right, okay.
Which Goes.
Well, aside from that, he does very traditional Broadway also. Mm-hmm. So he's, you know, has huge range. He can stretch a lot. He's amazing.
Thank you.
Jeremy, thank you so much for doing this for us. Thank you guys for being here.